Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Application Transformation, A Cultural Shift. My name is Jessica Newton, and I'll be today's moderator. So let's start by quickly introducing you to our speakers for today. Today, we are joined by Chris Longo and Jagdish Pai. Chris is the Service Delivery Manager for the OpenEdge applications in North America. Chris has a long history with the OpenEdge platform. He has spent many years delivering consulting and architectural services related to the OpenEdge platform, as well as spending many years delivering OpenEdge training and speaking at various conferences. Today, Chris and his team provide services related to PaaS enablement, security, CI/CD, migrations, and UX and modernization. Jagdish is a principal consultant and team lead for modernization projects. He has been building character, GUI, web, and mobile solutions using Progress OpenEdge since 1997 and has worked with a large number of clients across multiple verticals in a variety of roles such as developer, architect, mentor, and more. Over the years, Jagdish has developed many products, toolkits, and methodologies that have helped clients modernize their applications. I'm really excited to have Chris and Jagdish with us today, and now I'll turn it over to Chris to start the discussion.
Thanks, Jess. So today, some of the topics for our talk are going to include want to understand your objectives in terms of your application and your solution. And I want to talk about modernization, obviously, and what that means and what it can mean for you. And also, we'll dive into embracing continuous improvement and why that's so critical to modernizing applications today. And then we'll talk about building roadmaps, technically how to build that roadmap, what should be included, that kind of thing. And then finally, my associate, Jagdish, is going to talk about some of the emerging tooling that we're finding and using to execute these modernization projects. And then we'll have a Q&A. So let's dive right in. Let's talk a little bit about understanding objectives within an organization, and specifically objectives that are related to your overall business. So, we can ask the question, what is a cultural shift in the context of a software solution? Well, it means changing the mindset and behaviors for all those involved with a particular software solution. And that includes developers, managers, end users, stakeholders. And the first step to that cultural shift is really getting a handle on what are the objectives for my organization, for my business over a period of time, 2 years, 5 years. When you sit down and analyze what your objectives are, you might consider some of the following. Maybe one of my objectives is to deliver data that drives better decisions, that's more accurately extracted from an application. I want to be able to deliver application functionality, a faster software development lifecycle. And I want to deliver those type of solutions with zero code defects. Another important area is I want a user experience that is efficient and also delivers workflow that helps me achieve my business goals. I want to build adaptivity into the solution so that I can very easily react to changing market conditions. And also what's always important is through all of this, I want to be thinking about security, how to secure an application in terms of authentication, authorization, and how to secure that data at rest. And this is not an exhaustive list. Obviously, there can be more, but I'm kind of giving you an idea of what you should be thinking going into a modernization project. So, one of the things we do here at Professional Services is we do an application assessment. And so, a big part of that application assessment is understanding your objectives. That's why, we just kind of talked about that. But yeah, we're going to come in and, review your current application and the technology stack that you're using. We're going to work with you to define what the technology stack looks like in the future. And build a roadmap that you can use over the course of time, 2 years, 5 years, to achieve those goals, to achieve those tasks. Oftentimes, when companies decide they want to modernize, they start the modernization, but something comes up and they get sidetracked. Organizationally, they get sidetracked. A merger happens, or there's some kind of special request from the stakeholder, and you have to put down the modernization for a period of time, and then they just they have a hard time organizationally picking it back up. This is why having a roadmap and doing this assessment is so important. It helps you to re-engage in the modernization journey more easily. So when we talk about modernization, what does that mean? Modernization is basically realigning your current solution with your business needs and goals. And more specifically, you want to look at agility. How does my software solution adapt to changing business requirements? From an efficiency perspective, does the software solution provide efficient workflows to accomplish my tasks, or are there too many steps to doing something? From a user experience, how is that user experience delivered? Is it on the desktop? Is it in a browser? Is it omni-channel? Can I access the application on a mobile device? And also, you have to look at innovation. Am I positioned to take advantage of new technologies that are coming down the pike? For example, am I able to easily embrace something like AI tools or predictive analytics, those kind of things? Typically what we're faced with, when you have a legacy application, maybe it's built with an old framework, and that has its own limitations, and the architecture around that framework doesn't scale well, or it doesn't, you can't extend it very well. Typically, older applications have a very tightly coupled user experience with the business logic. So uncoupling that business logic from the user interface logic is very difficult, or it can be time consuming. These are all different, sort of challenges that we're faced with. And the idea is to break these limitations by implementing a new mindset and a environment of continuous improvement or continuous modernization. So when you look at an application, what's important to you? Well, a lot of people look at their application and they say, well, I really want to embrace a new user experience that's more modern, that exists on the web or on a tablet. It's easily delivered. I don't have to ship code artifacts to end user desktops or to an end user environment. The workflow eliminates so many steps to create an order or create a customer. It integrates more easily with other applications in my enterprise. I want to take advantage of something like AI and AI Code Assist. So all of these things constitute modernizing an existing application. It doesn't have to be all or none. I mean, you can step by step integrate or create these different solutions into your application. So I think a critical component to all of this is embracing this idea of continuous improvement. And from a high level, what that means is I'm constantly looking at my application solution with a critical eye. How can I make various aspects of that application better, right? So, when you embrace continuous improvement, within your culture, you have to consider communication, business strategy, and being fit for the future. And so, what does all that mean? Well, when you talk about communication, that comes into play when you're looking at different parties in an organization, including the stakeholders, the end users, that kind of thing. From a strategic perspective, I think it's important to always have that roadmap handy, and the roadmap's not written in stone. It can change over time. But that's your overall high level strategy for implementing your business goals over time. And then, what does it mean being fit for the future? Fit for the future are things like a modern user experience, being able to harvest the data that's locked away in your enterprise application. Right now, it might be locked away behind an old interface. I need to be able to get at that data, transform that data, and share it with other applications, or share it in such a way that I'm making more informed decisions. And the other part of things is, embracing continuous improvement, continuous deployment, being able to be agile in my software solution so that I can easily deliver enhancements to the end user. So my turnaround time is less. It's not 3 months, it's maybe 3 weeks, right? So, what's a stakeholder? Stakeholder management, is important in terms of engaging the stakeholders effectively. It involves identifying all the relevant people in your enterprise, understanding their needs and concerns, ensuring their activity and participation throughout the project, so that the stakeholders need to not just be involved at the beginning. They have to be involved all along the way, from the beginning through the design process, through the testing and the deployment. So creating a detailed roadmap is also essential. The roadmap should outline key phases, milestones, deliverables, providing a structured approach to transformation. It also helps in terms of aligning the project with the organizational goals, and ensures that all the team members are on the same page. And I'm going to talk in more detail about building a roadmap and what should go on it here in a couple of minutes. User experience is always something that is very popular and very important in this process. We had a session on the details of user experience, and I would recommend that you go back and see that recording. But it does have some very good ideas and really delves into the user experience development in detail. But from an end user perspective, um, you know, taking a look at their workflow and simplifying processes so they make less mistakes and they're more efficient, spending less time to complete application functions and business functions is critical. Application data and accessing that data is maybe the most important aspect in all of this. It's important to provide easy and secure, performant access to that data. You may also provide some form of aggregation or transformation to the data. Proper data management is really going to provide better decision making for everybody involved. Someone once said, if data is the new oil, then organizations that leverage that commodity to the greatest effect will be the winners. So remember to try and break down those silos between enterprise applications, the silos where the data exists. So the idea behind that, and we'll talk more about it, is to try and build out an API layer into your application so that you're better able to expose data in your application. And the other thing about the API, as opposed to just creating direct connections into the database, is the API lets you leverage your business logic, which controls authentication, authorization, and transformation. Change management, implementing change management is also important in terms of addressing the human part of modernization. This is about communicating what's coming, what's been done, where we are in the process. So people that aren't directly maybe involved in day-to-day development understand where we are in the process. Where one of the ways that people may execute modernization is to go on a per function basis in an application, or by persona. There may be some personas out there that are further down your roadmap. You got to keep those people in the loop. They need to understand they haven't been forgotten, right? We're getting to you. We're going to be doing some design work with your team to help expedite or help you with the whole user experience, in terms of maybe it's the shipping department or customer service. So it's important to maintain that communication strategy. And whether you do that with meetings or newsletters or whatever, all good ideas. Software development life cycle, I think, when we look at modernization, one area that we want to look at, or one area that's often forgotten, is to take a look at what is your release strategy? How do you release a version of a solution in your organization? Is it automated? Can it work faster? The idea when you start down this road of modernization is to not do one big release at the end of the project. You want to be able to release small functional parts of your application to focused groups of end users. Okay. That way, one, you're getting an immediate return on investment or a more immediate return on investment. And it also helps facilitate communication among all of the stakeholders. They're not having to wait until the end of a project, and they're able to give feedback, almost immediately, or they're giving feedback all along the way, as opposed to waiting for one big release. So I do a release, we go through testing, I get feedback from that particular group of stakeholders. Meanwhile, I may have another part of the application that's in development and going to be released, and I'm getting feedback from another group, right? That's kind of the way you have to start changing your mindset. So, in terms of road mapping something like this, what does that look like? So, from a very high level, the steps that you might go through in terms of road mapping, step one would be foundational updates, getting yourself upgraded to the latest, greatest platform bits. Once you have that, then you can start to do things like building out an API layer or a catalog of APIs that leverage your business logic and give you access to your data without being hindered by an old, obsolete user experience. Once you have that, you're unlocking your data, you're unlocking your business logic, and you can do that by integrating new user experiences, by integrating AI, by integrating new business tools. Jagdish will talk more about that, but that's kind of the result of step two. And step four just kind of builds on that. I think I mentioned leveraging the AI. So just briefly, in terms of doing your upgrade, I think there's a lot of benefits to upgrading and getting on the latest release of OpenEdge, which is latest long-term release is 12.8. Certainly from a security performance improvement, there are a lot of advantages in terms of building industry standard APIs. The PaaS platform is the platform of choice for doing that. For some folks, an upgrade also may include a platform migration, coming off of an older flavor of Unix to Linux. So, when a platform migration is involved with the upgrade, and you might consider doing an assessment, which is basically a planning phase. These are the things that have to happen to build out your application and get it running on 12. If you make heavy use of the classic app server, we have to go through the exercise of rebuilding or building PaaS instances to support that functionality. All very surmountable, but it probably is beneficial to do some planning around your upgrade. Especially if you're coming from older versions of OpenEdge, like a 9, version 9, version 10, or you're coming doing a platform migration. There could be some dependencies built into the application for the flavor of Unix. Maybe it's AIX, HPUX you're on, and what kind of enhancements do we have to make to the scripting? Those are all they're all part of the upgrade assessment and planning. So this gives you a quick visual of an upgrade. You do a discovery, and then you do an implementation, then you roll out the upgraded version of your solution. Once that's done, then you're kind of on to step two, which is, hey, I'm going to start building APIs that allow me to access my business logic and leverage my data. And there are all kinds of strategies in terms of how those APIs are built. We have a best practice that leverages an industry standard, RESTful endpoints, that kind of thing. And then, as I said, Here's some of the benefits of the APIs, and then unlocking your application data and your legacy business logic to great effect, right? And of course, everybody likes a new user experience. When I have those APIs built, I am in the position of using those APIs to drive any kind of user experience I might imagine. As long as it talks REST, I can build that user experience. So if you want to do .NET, or you want to do some sort of Angular, something on the web, something mobile, or just integrate with other applications, you are in a position to do so. You're just leveraging the API, and those APIs are reusable, right? The API you use for a particular UX screen could be reused for an integration into another application. All right, so with that being said, I'd like to now transition over to my associate, Jagdish Pai, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the emerging tooling.
Thank you, Chris. Let us first discuss what it means to modernize in 2026. Few years ago, modernization was primarily related to new UI, whether it's migrating from character UI to GUI, then to web, and then to mobile. But now it is not just related to UI, but much more. Of course, the user experience is still one of the primary focus where consumers are expecting best-in-class experience. The UI UX has progressed from just a screen-based interaction to voice and text and touch, and now the AI prompts. Personalization and unique experience for each user is no longer just nice to have, but it is expected by users. After all, you expect Netflix to show you the movies you will like and watch, and not their whole catalog. Rules related to accessibility are also changing, and compliance with those rules is mandatory. Now, with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, that is AI, modern applications cannot just have AI features added as an afterthought, but to be developed with AI in mind from the beginning. In fact, in the future, it is possible that users' interaction with your application may not be based on clicking on certain menus and entering values. It may be based on requests in plain English that your AI agent will understand and convert it into a workflow of multiple steps to satisfy that request. Think of Alexa or a Siri or OK Google, but for interacting with your application website. There are many AI native tools that will help with user experience design, and the new ones are literally coming in every week. Some of the notable ones include Figma Make, that can translate natural language prompts and design files into functional high-fidelity prototypes. It enables rapid ideation by allowing users to generate, iterate, and refine designs using AI. It can turn static designs into interactive, shareable code-based experiences. Wizard is an AI-powered design platform that allows anyone, even those with a zero design or coding experience, to create, prototype, and edit user interfaces for apps and websites. UX Pilot is an AI-powered design assistant that helps product teams create UI screens and UX flows in minutes rather than days. It is a tool that turns text description of an app idea into functional editable wireframes and designs automatically. Framer AI is a web design and publishing platform that uses artificial intelligence to create professional, high-performance websites from a simple plain English text prompt. Think of it as a design to live AI assistant that takes a description like design me a modern minimalistic marketing site for a tech startup and instantly generates a fully responsive layout complete with images, copy, and color scheme. Some of these tools in action is how Figma Make can read a prompt and then generate or update the UI UX for you. Here in this example, the user is asking it to change something and Figma makes that change for you. Here is another example where a user can ingest a hand-drawn sketch and create a user experience screen or a fully functional UI just from that sketch. Or UX Pilot can accept a single prompt like create me a wallet screen and it will have a fully functional wallet screen generated. There are also tools and platforms as shown here that allow not only to convert your design to final code, but also include team collaboration and ability to manage the content centrally. We just had a glimpse into the use of AI in user interface and user experience world. The question we have is how we can use AI in our ABL application development. There are many ways we can integrate AI with ABL. Today, I'm primarily focusing on one of our product offering, that is OpenEdge MCP connector for ABL. What is OpenEdge MCP connector? Think of it as an AI bridge between your development environment and various LLMs such as Cloud or GPT. The MCP connector provides an interactive workspace where you can query, generate, and refine ABL code directly within your existing workflow. The connector excels at code completion, boilerplate generation, documentation, and automated code reviews. By leveraging RAG, that is retrieval augmented generation, the connector retrieves context-specific information from your proprietary documentation and your code base and guidelines. The connector serves as a living knowledge repository, offering standardized code snippets, best practices, and instant feedback. With deep IDE integration and workflow automation, the connector provides real-time, context-rich support without disrupting productivity. A critical function of connector is to support for modernization. It can refactor older code to contemporary ABL patterns, generate unit tests, and assist with security scans and regulatory compliance. It helps with streamlining upgrade to OpenEdge 12 and reducing technical debt. The connector, along with LLMs, scans code for deprecated constructs, flags incompatibilities, and suggests changes needed for OpenEdge 12 compatibility. It also provides configuration templates and integration guidance, enabling teams to adopt modern build and deployment practices with confidence. With OpenEdge 12 offering support for OpenAPI and REST, the connector helps developers expose business logic as RESTful services and update code so that applications are future ready. By automating error-prone migration steps, the connector acts as an always available knowledge base. It reduces the risk of human error, accelerates timeline, and lowers the overall cost of modernization. Now, I'm sure you would like to see some of these capabilities in action. Due to time constraints, we cannot go too deep in detail of every possibility, but I have built a small demo of what AI Assistant and Connector can do for us. Here is my development environment using Windsurf IDE, which is a fork on Microsoft VS Code. By the way, you can also use Microsoft VS Code. This environment is connected to OpenEdge MCP connector, as you can see here. Now I'm going to give it certain prompts, and I will show you how those prompts are used by the AI. Let me try my first prompt, which is a simple prompt saying, create me an ABL procedural.p. It will have a procedure to add two input integers and return the total. Also add a function that will accept two parameters, add them, and return the total. Also add the code to run this procedure for me. Here is me sending it, and I'm using Claude Sonnet here, 4.5. It's thinking. And it has created me a procedure. As you can see here, within probably 10 seconds or less, it created the program with a procedure to add integer, a function to add integer, and a logic to execute that code. It also explains what it did here, and I'm going to say accept all. So let's say you have created a program, or you have a .p like this in your system, but now you have decided to use this to go to an object-oriented programming, as it is a better mechanism now for the future development. Using this code as a context, I'm adding a prompt that says, hey, convert this procedure to OOABL class. Now, how is it doing it, by the way? How does it know what is function, what is a procedure, what is a defined variable syntax, what is assigned syntax. That is what OpenEdge MCP connector is providing. OpenEdge MCP connector has knowledge of 12.8, version 12.8 Progress OpenEdge. It knows the syntax, and with the magic of LLM and OpenEdge connector, now it can do the code for us. So in this case, it created add integer as a class where it converted my procedure to a method and my function to a method with, of course, different name, and the class is ready. Oh, by the way, in earlier one, I had asked it to create the test, and it also created a test class for me for that program where it is able to test, unit test my class. And I'm going to accept that as well. Now, let's say I'm in this class, but I don't know what this class is doing actually, because this class was either written long ago or it doesn't explain everything. I can even ask it to say, hey, comment or document this class, go understand it and let us know what it's doing. And now, as you can see, it read, it understood, and created comments for me to say what this class is, what it does, and it also explaining what the documentation was added. And by the way, I can tell it something to do differently. Because of lack of time, I'm not going to do that now. But I could fine tune this process with as many prompts, with as many text questions that I can ask, and it will refine its method. Now I'm going to accept this file. Now I need to say, hey, let me run this and see how it works. So I'm going to say, in this case, this is my .p. We'll go back to that context and say, I'm going to run this procedure and show me the test result. Now this is just creating a test case for us. In this case, it knows how to run it. And to run it, it's going to run using the underscore progress.p. And in this case, it has added that as a batch file. Or it says it can create a batch file. I can run it manually. And it ran it for me because it created that batch file. And the results are here. And both the result, when it says 10 and 25, it is 35. When a function was sent, it is 35. So as you can see, it can also create the test cases where it created a batch file for me to run add integers.p. And in that case, the answers also are available. And one now last example that I want to show is, let's say I have this code. Let's say I have this code, which is a simple progress program. I'm defining a timetable for each, and I have a message statement. Obviously, all the progress programmers in our case would immediately know that this will not run. This will probably give a runtime error because I'm accessing this field outside. But what if I ask our tool to say, is there any error in this program? And it is able to find out that, yes, there is a runtime error because the line is attempting to call the variable without the variable being in scope. Then what happens at runtime? It is going to tell me that there is a runtime error, and this is why it would not run. In addition to that, it is also found out that correctly, the temp table is empty, no records are created, so it won't even iterate. And even if record exists, the buffer are outside the scope. In addition to that, it is giving me an option on how to fix it, what the code changes need to be made. And I can even ask it to make those code changes, and it will make those code changes. So in short, this is a very small summary of what the capabilities are of our OpenEdge MCP connector. And any of those LLM models, like in my example, I'm using Claude Sonnet, but GPT or there are many more that you could use. This completes my demo of OpenEdge MCP connector. Now we are open to take questions.
Great. So Chris and Jagdish, I see you have your cameras on. That's great. Are you ready to get started with the Q&A?
Sure. Thanks, Jess. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so the first question is, how do we get the OpenEdge MCP connector for ABL?
You want to take that, Chris?
So the MCP connector for ADL is available in your download area, and also I believe you have to register for for part of it in communities. Is that your
Yes.
understanding, Jagdish? Yeah.
Yes. And in the chat, I have posted a link that shows how you can get that, how do you configure that, and how to use that. So I hope everybody can see that chat and the link, but that link explains what configuration is needed to use the OpenEdge MCP connector. And as Chris mentioned, it is available to you. OpenEdge MCP connector uses 12.8 syntax. So upgrading or migrating to 12.8 would be very beneficial to use the latest syntax and the latest knowledge of Progress ABL.
Okay, great. And is there any cost associated with it?
So to use the OpenEdge MCP connector and to in your system, there is no direct cost. It's a part of your maintenance agreement. So if you are on 12.8 and under maintenance, you will have access to the OpenEdge MCP connector. Now there are two components here, of course. One is that LLM that we are using, the AI that we are using, and of course the MCP connector, which helps us with the ABL. The LLM, of course, is something that you bring on your own. You could use Visual Studio Code, GitHub Copilot in that, or you could use Windsurf, you could use Cursor. They are all IDEs that have AI built in. And what MCP connector is doing is that it is exposing the ABL syntax and ABL knowledge to that LLM so that that LLM can read, understand, and provide you answers in the OpenEdge world. So the OpenEdge part of it is available to you for free. LLM part, you may get it on your own, or your company may have it, or there are other ways to basically have it available in your environment.
Okay. And someone is asking, why API first and open the data after? Would seem that first you should open the data and then build the API.
So the reason here is that your business logic is your strength, right? So I could say that give me a data that just says what customers are, what my customers are. That would be exposing the data. But what if you need a logic that says, show me the pricing routine for this specific customer in this specific order? Now, this is not stored. This information is obviously not stored in one table. You go through a program that goes run through a lot more other setups and other scenarios. This is where your ABL strength is. This is your business logic. So to be able to execute that business logic, you need something running, and that is what API is providing. So in our manner, in that if you have API first approach, you can use it to just send the data from a table if you want. But in addition to that, you can add your business logic, which is what your strength of your application is, into the mix. So doing that, you suddenly now expose your business logic not only to now in this world, now not only to AI, but it could be to any other third party or any other interface, whether it a web interface not written anything in ABL, it could be written in JavaScript, any framework, it could be a third party application, and now it could be AI agents. So which is why we first. Sure, go ahead, Chris.
I think the other thing the API gives you is the ability to enforce authentication and maybe more importantly authorization. So there may be sensitive data in your database, and there may be certain individuals or entities that should have access to it or not have access to it, and so the API. Using an API gives you the opportunity to enforce that kind of restriction, as opposed to, just allowing someone or access through ODBC or JDBC, that kind of thing, where you're standing directly on the tables.
Okay, great. So someone asks, your demo is running on Windows. Our system runs on Linux. Can we develop with VS Code or another tool directly on Linux?
Yes. So VS Code has, and I can't show it in this presentation, but VS Code allows you to have a code not on your local machine, but on another machine, which is a Linux, and then still use VS Code and its integration with the LLM. So while I don't have a step-by-step instructions for it, it's been done, and we professional services can definitely help you with those kind of setup. But it is possible. You don't have to have everything on Windows. You can have your code base and database on Linux and have VS Code. And by the way, VS Code also runs in certain Linux environment. So that is possible. It's just that my demo is on Windows, but that should not stop you.
Okay. Someone asked, can they connect Windsurf to their Progress database to run the code?
Yes, the demo that I did actually was using Windsurf IDE and not the VS Code, but you could use either Windsurf, Cursor, or any of them. Basically, it's in all these IDEs you're selecting an LLM agent, right? So the Cloud one that I'm using understands that, and it would be able to do what we asked it to do, including database connected code.
Okay. And do I need a subscription from Microsoft or other LLMs?
I won't. So Microsoft has something called as a GitHub Copilot, which is their plugin, or which is their extension into VS Code for AI. Then there is so to get that ability of AI agent, yes, you need to have some subscription services with Microsoft. And they are at a individual level. They could be probably at a company level. There are corporate level. So there will be some subscription involved to use the agents part of it. The agent talking to MCP and benefiting from MCP, there is no subscription. Progress provides that as a part of your maintenance.
Okay. And someone just wants to reiterate, did I hear correctly that the MCP connector for ABL is free?
It is free when you are under maintenance on 12.8.
Okay.
And we're talking here MCP connector. There is another product called MCP server, which is not part of this demo, but even that one also, I believe, is a part of maintenance. So the only thing to keep in mind is that if you try to run this on version 11, the syntax files, they're all provided. They are on version 12.8. So it's beneficial to be on a latest version to get the most out of this.
Okay. And you mentioned the MCP server. Someone's wondering what the difference is between the MCP connector for ABL and the OpenEdge MCP server.
So these two are different. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just going to say the MCP connector allows you to leverage AI for coding. So it integrates into VS Code using Windsurf. The MCP server allows you to leverage AI and large language models to integrate into your application, to use the AI to extract data from your database. That's the difference.
Right. And so basically, if you say that I have defined my APIs, and there are multiple APIs, of course, but I want to use agents AI capabilities, then you would have MCP server. A very simple, small example here. Let's say I have an API for customer. Say I have an API for orders. Those two are completely separate calls. I want to find some customer from certain state with the order of a certain item. Now, in your human brain, what you would do, you would run an API for customer, get customers from specific state. Then you would do another API for order for those customers. Now, we providing OpenEdge MCP server and creating an open API specs that we feed to the AI agent. You could ask in English a question to that agent saying, show me all the customers whose orders from this state. And the AI agent smartly will know which API to call. That is, first call the customer API, then using the data that came back, parsing the data, which API to call for order with the specific parameters, and then get that data, summarize it all, and send it to you. That is what AI agent can do. And to support that, we need APIs which are exposed through the MCP server, which is a different product. And like Chris said, connector is primarily for development. It's ability to understand ABL syntax and its ability also to LLM's ability to read your code base and do suggest specific things to your code base is what brings it all together for development.
Okay.
So
And
I just want to I want to add to a little bit here. So in the context of going through a modernization process, if I have to do any kind of code refactoring, which likely I will have to do in some form or fashion, nowadays I can't imagine not employing AI to help me with that code refactoring, because that's what it's really good at. Doing repetitive tasks. It's not the silver bullet, but it will help in some form or fashion to improve my velocity in terms of refactoring. And now everybody's mileage is going to vary on that, but I think it bears looking into, if that makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Still staying on the subject of the MCP connector, someone is asking, can this be used from the OpenEdge Developer Studio?
So at the moment in version 12, VS Code, and basically as an extension, it is not yet fully integrated into the Developer Studio. Now, there are I'm going to post a link in here about what's new in OpenEdge 13. And then there is in the chat, I have posted a link there. So version 13 has enhancements and improvements for PDSOE for the integration with agents. But at the moment, to be honest, from a developer point of view, VS Code or such an IDE is a better solution, partly because these things are changing so rapidly that improvements are coming in absolutely on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And VS Code and those IDEs are able to keep up with it as they are built into with that idea in mind. And VS Code is a really good development environment. So if you are able to use that, you would benefit from full-featured AI support. At this moment, better than PDSOE in version 12.
Okay. And someone asks, from what I understand, the connector only works on versions 12 or higher.
So basically, connector is providing you with ABL syntax, and that syntax is from 12.8. So if you try to run it on your code and say, hey, give me a program that does this, or read my program and convert it into something, it will use the ABL 12 syntax, ABL 12 related features, which may not even compile on your version 11. So while you could say that, can I use this on version 11? Then answer is you could, but then you have to review the response. You'll have to review what it sent and make sure that that is applicable to your release. So in a sense, you could use it, but you will not get the most out of it, or its answers will be based on version 12 syntax. And there is no plan on doing anything for version 11, as it is a deprecated version now.
Okay. And in addition to read data from the database, does the MCP server allow write?
So at this, because it's API based and you are going to provide the APIs to the server, if your API allows it, and there is a configuration in MCP server that also you can say it's a read only versus not. So if you fine tune that and have an API that can update, then yes, it would allow you to write as well. So you need that API and the configuration that allows you to either update or not, both tuned correctly. But if you do it, then yes, you could write it as well.
Okay. And someone is asking, when is version 13 becoming available?
Good.
Jess, do you want to answer that one?
Yes. So OpenEdge 13 is already available. It's already live. So we can put a link to the What's New documentation in the chat. But yeah, 13 is already available. So be sure to go trial it and check it out. So a question came in of, can Progress help us set it up? I'm assuming they're talking about the connector in our environment and train our staff.
So the answer is yes. We offer that as part of a professional services engagement. It's typically 3-day, 24-hour engagement that's delivered over the course of a period of time, depending on your availability. But yeah, I mean, we come in. The first day is all about getting you configured with the MCP and Windsurf in on your specific development environment, and then we go through a day of how to use it, and then the third day is kind of looking at your use cases and making sure you're off and running with with the the MCP connector and in your application and on your environment. So.
Yes. So at the end of this, you would have what you saw in my demo. You'll have a either VS Code or a Windsurf or a cursor, and then a connection to that extension. Then how do you configure that connector to connect to your OpenEdge MCP connector setup? And then examples of how to use it, what kind of prompts, questions you can use, how do you review it, how do you add, maybe if you need unit testing to it, there is an extension for unit testing. There are multiple extensions like that. There are code review related extensions. There are refactoring, as Chris said, extensions. So we kind of help you set those up and show that to you, and then help you plug it with your code base. So you could literally tell it that this is my sample code, this is my boilerplate template. I want you to create a program like this template. So that way, the next code that is generated, it will not be a generic ABL code. It will be exactly based on your rules for development. So we do help with that kind of training.
Okay, great. And are you considering a VS Code extension to add some features from Dev Studio, such as pre-processor view, database connections, class browser, etc.?
Some of those extensions are there, and I don't know if you are familiar with Riverside ABL extension. I would recommend you, if you go to the extension library basically and type OpenEdge, you will see a lot of extensions, and one of them is Riverside. So some of these extensions allow you to do what you're asking. Now, can it be as strong or as all the features that Developer Studio has? Probably not. But from the ABL development point of view, the extensions that we have now, they are as good as you need for a regular development. So I would recommend just take a look at the extensions, search by OpenEdge, search by ABL, and then you'll see them. And the ABL unit, the one I was talking about, Riverside extension I was talking about, there are all these extensions that do what you're asking, that Developer Studio was doing.
Okay, great. And someone wants to know, do we have to expose our dev environment to use the MCP connector?
That's a good question. And this is something just to keep in mind, that is nothing specific to Progress. But do understand that the AI agent that is working, the cloud, the one I use, or ChatGPT, as you're familiar with GPT, they are all not running on your machine. They are running on some server with a large setup of GPU, taking a lot of power, everything. So those are not on your machine. So your development environment needs access to those servers. And in addition to that, of course, OpenEdge MCP connector is running on a specific server that you get specific key that you plug in to authenticate. But that is also running on some other server on the web. So technically, your dev environment needs to have internet access and to be able to connect to both of these for this to work. So in a sense that if you are in a firewalled environment where you absolutely cannot go out, no HTTP traffic allowed, then these things would not work the way you are expecting. But if you are a typical development environment where you are allowed to connect, then yes, you would need connection to the outside world for this to work. Hope that explains it.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, thank you both so much. Looks like we're out of time. So for those who asked a question during the presentation that we maybe didn't get a chance to go over yet, we will get back to you one by one through a follow-up email that you'll be receiving. And yeah, thank you to everyone who attended today's webinar. Thank you to Chris and Jagdish for a fantastic presentation and a great Q&A. And we really appreciate your time and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.